I found myself alternately being very opened by this process and whatever was just happening. And I felt my torso just completely light up. And having done a fair amount of shadow work for a while, I'm very aware of the body sense and where these areas light up when they get triggered as it pertains to
Yeah.
uncovering trauma. This was
Mm-hmm.
a whole different thing, and I really felt like my whole middle section was on fire. And then a very rebellious streak came up in me as well too, because I, I didn't know what it was, I didn't understand it, and I was in a very, very unfamiliar environment. That was where the rebellion was really seated for me. And then once this grace showed up, it literally just felt like just coming home after decades.
Hi everyone. Today I'm back with Ted Hawkins. If you're not familiar with him, then you must know that he was already a guest on the channel, and I'm going to link the video that we did first. And ever since I met him, I communicated that if he was ever open to have another conversation, then I was also open to it. So we're here again. And before we start, I just want to say that normally when I see people who share their stories, it's normally that they share those stories in retrospect. But one of the coolest things ever since I came across Ted is that from my very first video that I saw of him, and then the second video, and then our conversation, and then after our conversation, it's like his journey is constantly unfolding. And like where I saw him last time was in a completely different place to where he is now, which is why I love that, because it's kind of very fresh and interesting and different in that way. So, Ted, so basically, give us a recap of, especially for those who haven't watched the first video, just a recap of, where we where we left it off, basically, what was going on at the time.
Um, I think where we were at last is I had recounted a bit of the history. That there was a lot of severe trauma that had happened through my whole life. Up to and including heroin addiction, prison, then an
Yeah.
awakening process. And then I found myself over the last year or two, really after having any number of shifts, having them open, close, some of them permanent, some of them, uh, sort of would be reduced. I found myself the last year or two in the grips of some very unwilling shadow material. Some stuff addressing around the psychological belief structures, and was just kind of coming out of that and watching things like identities based around trauma, which I now call like the trauma structure, watching that fall off,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and just sort of what it was like um, after that movement. And since that time, everything changed again. And it's really moved into what I would call I may stumble a little bit because it's really, as cliche as it sounds, it's really becoming harder and harder to describe
Mm-hmm.
what this is.
Yeah.
And I have a natural sort of desire to not speak in what we would say traditional awakening language, because it's some of it's very can be very, very problematic, or people have already attached certain types of ways of doing things or theories or exercises, and so I tend to avoid the buzzwords as much as I can to keep it as very fresh and direct and relative to how it's unfolding here as
I
well
mean,
too.
you're in a perfect place because I have such little knowledge of traditions and that kind of language myself
Sure.
that
Sure.
I'm more than happy for you to talk in your own way, and I totally relate to what you've just said. I think that sometimes there's so much meaning, different kinds of meanings attached to even the terminology and so on. It can get really confusing. And if anything, I've always been a fan of simplicity and speaking as simply as possible, because that's all I'm capable of myself, to be honest. So perfect, So
Yeah, I
just
love that.
so take it from wherever you want to take it.
Okay. So New Year's was the wow, just the really the start of something that I had never seen or experienced before. And a friend of mine, who's also a meditation teacher, invited me to a retreat.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, sure, that sounds great. And in my mind, I was thinking sort of a standard, generic, maybe a awakening or non-dual retreat. And the format was probably going to go like sit for a little while, have a talk for a little while, sit for a little
Mm-hmm.
while, talk for a while, and then just it just seemed like a nice little break to me. So we get there, and I jokingly tell him now that he completely tricked me, which he, of course, he didn't intentionally do. It wasn't on purpose, but I'm like, you completely tricked me into this. So we get there, and it's in a model of uh, awakening that I just really had nothing to do with, and it was Hindu. And it was based on the lineages, and they had all the pictures, the black and white pictures of these mysterious looking sages everywhere. And then their in their particular sangha, that their guru had uh, already passed, so they had the little weird little shrine set up for him. And I'm not necessarily adverse to any of that
Mm-hmm.
stuff, but I came out of a really strict Zen background. So there's, we don't mess with any of the trappings once we get into meditation or inquiry. And here's all this flowery stuff. And I just looked at
Yeah.
it for a minute and I went, okay, why not? Um, so the retreat begins, and I could say the effect was almost immediate. And for the sake of people listening, in a Hindu retreat like that, they talk about shaktipat, which is an energy, the sort of the energy of divine creation,
Mm-hmm.
and that the guru from on the lineage all the way down into and then into the retreat sort of transmits this energy. Ram Dass talked about it with his teacher, and there's a few with Neem Karoli Baba, and there's been a few, or Anandamayi Ma. There's been all these
Mm-hmm.
examples of these folks that were very, very touched by the guru or by God, whatever word you're more comfortable with.
Yep.
And I kind of went, okay, sure, that's I mean, I've had any number of pretty intense experiences, but always resistant to wanting to label it as something like that because it sounds so exotic and so mystical. So
Yeah.
we begin the retreat, and everyone is just a very small sangha, and everyone's very, very friendly, and we're made to feel very welcome, and instantly things start happening. And we had started on a basic sit, and it was as it progressed. It was only 2 days. I can just say, as it progressed, the entire room felt like it was under pressure, and it felt warm. And I think again, because I know that you're putting this out there to just any and everyone, I know that the people may tend to be skeptical or may tend to be like, I don't know, I'm not really sure about that. But it was, and I found myself being very, very surprised as well too, of going, what is actually happening here? And we would
Mm-hmm.
take breaks, and then I would move out of this small room, and it felt like moving through a curtain. And you went out, and things were a little bit more normal. You moved back in, and at the time, I wasn't really able to assign what that was. And in reality, it doesn't necessarily matter what it was. We're just giving it a name to assign,
Yeah.
whether it was the Sangha coming together, whether it was just, it was actually the guru. None of that really matters at this point. So it went through for 2 days, and I found myself alternately being very opened by this process and whatever was just happening. And I felt my torso just completely light up. And having done a fair amount of shadow work for a while, I'm very aware of the body sense and where these areas light up when they get triggered as it pertains to
Yeah.
uncovering trauma. This
Mm-hmm.
was a whole different thing, and I really felt like my whole middle section was on fire. And then a very rebellious streak came up in me as well too, because I didn't know what it was. I didn't understand it. And I was in a very, very unfamiliar environment. And in this environment, they do things like rituals, just small ones, no goats or blood or anything crazy like that. And in the beginning ritual, they ask you to go up and you make a devotion and you take the bindi, which is the little mark on the red forehead, or the red mark on the forehead, excuse me, and then they just symbolically wrap a string around your wrist for protection. And this is a small group, remember, so everybody walks up, and I knew exactly how it was going to be for me. And they said, okay, you're welcome to just gesture to me quietly. You can come up. And I said, I'm not doing it. No, thank you. And I just really felt like this, just no. And I was trying to be very polite and not kind of cause a scene or make a
Yeah.
fuss, but I'm like, this isn't for me. I'm just here to hang out, do
Yeah.
some sitting. We'll see what happens. And they pleaded gently with me back. Are you sure? And I just went, and I got a little more stern, a little more fierce. And I'm like, I'm not doing it. And they relented a bit. And so that went that way the whole time through the rest of that day's retreat, where there was this internal rebellion where I'm sitting there and my torso's on fire, and we're sitting for an average of an hour and a half or so per session. Then there's a little bit of a talk, and I'm noticing this internal battle, this wrestling with whatever this is, and then I'm feeling a little self-conscious because in my mind I've disrupted their very important, they're very precious
Yeah.
ritual. And I didn't
Yeah.
want to do that. I was trying to be as quiet as possible. Just leave me alone. Let me sit here in the corner. I'm fine. And by the evening, uh, I was sitting in the retreat and I had this hoodie on and I had it pulled over my face for a little bit of safety, and just tears are streaming down my face. And this internal, I don't really know what to call it, but it was directly connected to some of the deepest parts of shadow that I don't think that I had uncovered yet. And they were about survival, and they were about how the body and head moves through the world and the self-perception there, but at the very, very, very deepest existential level. And it's this push-pull back and forth. And when we went on our final break, the guy that had invited me to the retreat, I think we went to a store or something real quick to, I don't know, grab a drink or something. And um, I remember being in the car with him and saying, whatever it is that I'm experiencing, and whatever I was using the word God because I'm very comfortable with that word, but you could call it presence or
Mm-hmm.
life. And I said, God needs to meet me where I'm at. You need to, because I was very angry and it was very hostile. I said, this has to be good enough. I have to be good enough. You need to meet me in my anger. I've walked towards you enough times. I've put in all this effort over all this 15 years. I'm done. I don't know where else to go. And then I'm alternately very angry and then sobbing as well in the car. And then we go back into the retreat and I go in for another round of this. So that ended the first day. Then and it wasn't like a stay over retreat. People had hotel rooms or something. So we took off, then came back the next morning. And I thought, well, I'm feeling a little looser, but there's still something really happening here. I didn't really sleep much. Um, the torso was still on fire, and I said, maybe I'll try to blend in a little bit. Maybe I'll let him put the little bindi on my forehead or whatever. And we started again, and sure enough, nope, not going to do it. So there was this tremendous push-pull again happening in this entire time. I'm trying to understand what this is. And at one point, my friend said, it's karma being burned out of you. And that was sort of a new one for me, because when we think of karma, or we think of um, energy that's connected to stored identities in the body or shadow work, we generally tend to think of it as something that we have to kickstart the mechanism for, whether
Mm-hmm.
we soften it through meditation, whether we start really dissolving it through inquiry, but it always appears in the beginning that we have to get going. It's effort. It's something we do. I'm going to sit down and meditate. I'm going to work on inquiry. I'm going to do shadow work. I'm going to whatever. And this was something completely different that had nothing to do with me, had nothing to do with my effort. And quite the contrary, in this context, I found myself in someone else's uh, arena, of this venue, of this Hindu thing that's so based in feeling, and all of this just is very gooey, very mushy. And I'm the very stoic kind of Zen guy. And so I'm not only am I not putting forth effort, but I'm rebelling against it whilst, and it's still happening to me. And the whole time, it actually took about a week for me to really understand uh, what it was that was happening. And it got so intense that the last couple of sits, I couldn't go into the actual meditation hall. There was a couch just outside, and I found myself wrapped in a blanket, pulled over with my hoodie, just sitting quietly. And then I would have to go outside, and I'm shaking my hands to just get some of this, whatever is flowing through me, just kind of, doing some like TRE or some somatic exercises. And I'm pacing back and forth outside. And the entire process just ramped up. And what was revealed in that, specifically for me, was the oppression of the identity, the oppression of the personality, which is inherently how the body is wired. It's inherently how we move through the world. And before that, especially in watching some of the teachers, some of the ones that are very revered, there seems to be this subtle thread of, okay, you're not the body, you're not the personality, you're not all of those things, which can be a good Kickstarter for a practice. But it can tend towards you're really denying that human aspect of how it is we're configured. So there's still a body, there's still a personality, there's still preferences and likes and dislikes. And we've all seemed to have rushed towards this goal of going, I have no preferences. I'm a statue. Everything is just fine, and I'm in total equanimity, which is nonsense from this side of where I'm sitting now. But it's really only accessible at a certain point during this process, right? In the beginning, of course, we seem to just naturally do that. So I'm sitting outside, and this whole movement of the personality is happening, and it's this pushback against this apparent world of, I have tried to shape myself into this world, into whether it was society, whether it was relationships, jobs, any and everything, in an attempt to be what it is that you wanted me to be, rather than honoring or help or loving and appreciating the way that life had actually shaped me. So there was tremendous shame around TED, the configuration of TED, and that this thing welled up in me where I just said, absolutely not, no more. And almost like a vow, like a really, really deep promise of like, I am never going to do that again. Yeah. And I never want to. It seemed like no matter what happened to me in my life, that honoring of how I'm plugged in and that authenticity had to be there, up to and including things like, I'm willing to lose all my jobs. I'm willing to lose all my relationships. I'm willing to be completely misunderstood the rest of my life. I'm willing to be homeless. It was this just, I don't care anymore. So this entire thing happens, and I'm just sitting out there quietly. And as we are wrapping up the retreat, and I've been outside the entire time, and this process is just moving. And of course, there's tears, and I can't stop. I can't stop walking in circles just to keep the energy going. And it begins to sort of settle and culminate. And the retreat ends, and my friend drove me back to my place, and I'm just kind of sitting with everything. And it took I don't know, maybe a week for everything to get really clear. What was surprising, though, in this, and what made it so different than any model of any retreat that I had heard,
Mm-hmm.
was when we hear stories about retreats, when people go, many times they'll have some sort of opening. And then as they go back into their normal lives, it tends to shut down a little bit, right? It
Mm-hmm.
seems to be it's to a degree, some type of a typical model. And in my case, it just got more and more intense. It just kept going. And to the point where I was a week into it and I'm getting 2 and 3 hours of sleep and I'm still
Right.
moving through all this stuff that I just wondered, is this ever going to stop?
Was the energy still moving through your body? And also, and what else was moving through? Was it stuff coming up of the past and more kind of
Yes.
stories and belief, that sort of thing? Like an
Yes. So
avalanche? Yeah.
it really was. It was like floodgates were opened,
Mm-hmm.
and it was very, very connected to the body. There was still just the sort of the burning, the whole torso, all these energy centers just lit up. And then there was
Yep.
specifics about my personality or how I viewed the world. It really just coming up, and they would come up in the form of insights. And I found myself not wanting to do anything other than just sit or pray and it never felt like this is something I need to do. I would just automatically find myself on the couch, just in just this deep absorption, or I would find myself just sort of having this dialogue with this active dialogue with God or the guru or with myself or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And as that was coming up, it started to become clearer and clearer that there was a very, 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 very strong movement happening. So, and what that was connected to specifically is that when we do shadow work, at least how it seems here, is we tend to start at the top, start at the surface level things. We start at maybe events that happen to us or identities that are more easily explored because they don't have as much of an emotional
Mm-hmm.
charge on them. And then it gets down into sort of deeper stuff, right? And then these are hidden traumas. And then it gets into this very deep, purely existential level. And that is always around the two things. And I didn't come up with this. I heard someone else come up with it, but I find it very accurate. They're
Mm-hmm.
around the deepest sense of love and safety. So safety could mean safety of the body. It could be
Mm-hmm.
safety of the emotions, existential safety, like when people run up against the very strong sense of no self and they feel like they're disappearing and they panic, that kind of safety. And love, as it relates to sort of the other side of awakening, as it relates to I'm not in charge of this, as it relates to surrender, as it relates to there's an entire force that has nothing to do with us as separate personalities that is moving this thing, that is orchestrating this thing, and that has us sort of in its embrace the entire time. And I found I had some very deep issues towards both of those. The love part was the deep sense of unworthiness, of the TED, of the personality, of the stuff that had been programmed, of the failures in my life as a result of that programming. And then the safety was very much like, am I going to be okay? Am I going to be able to move through the world? Will I actually end up in an alley somewhere homeless or dead or whatever? And up until that point, I had always felt like I was in opposition with life. Life was a bit of an opponent.
Yep.
So, and the longer that this went, it started to be very, very clear that whether you wanted to call it karma being burned out of you, whether you wanted to have the very mystical trappings of the blessing of the guru, and to be clear, it doesn't matter to me. I don't really know. I'm comfortable with that language, but that it was a force that I had never, ever seen before. And the simple word for it was grace.
Yeah.
It was absolute grace, that I did nothing to deserve, that I did nothing to initiate, that I did nothing to begin the process. It was just a total freebie from life. It was just a 100% blessing. And when that hit me, when it really hit me, that's where I really just started to do this deepest sense of letting go,
Mm-hmm.
this deepest sense of gratitude. And through the years of this exploration and some of the tremendous shifts and the insights, and then the pieces of identity falling off, I don't know that I ever really had a sense of gratitude. There was always like, okay, I'm here. I made it ish, or I've, there's some level, right? There's some
Yeah,
level of clarity here. There's
yeah, yeah.
increasing clarity. But then the thought that came in right after that, but at what cost?
Mm-hmm.
What, at what cost? Did it have to be as severe as it was in my case? Hey, God, whatever, could you have made it a little bit easier? Because I know people that have had much softer, more gentle processes, more all of that. And I think there was just this tiniest bit of resentment, and that was keeping this sense of gratitude from being there. But when this grace, this movement of grace showed up, everything was clear. And I just was floored and went, it was like, me? Really? You're me? And in that moment, I was very much a very small version of Ted. I was very much just the personality. I was very much the child. Me? And just the resounding answer was yes, absolutely. And the overwhelming gratitude, I feel like continued with this grace to just keep this process moving here in me. And I finally understood what all the teachers that I've heard in the past, especially the ones in the distant past that we admire and revere so much. So this is grace. Um, and it felt like returning home. And so what the process has been since then, and it's been 2.5 months, has been this insane roller coaster of moving deeper and deeper and deeper into this. And I found that any of the last shreds of resistance to anything that might come up here were gone. It was just moving out of the way and really, really moving into something that is the only word that I can use for it is there's an ever and ever increasing sense of surrender to this. Whereas before, I don't know. Maybe I need to keep one finger on the wheel just to manage this because
Yeah.
bad shit's happened to me. And it's
Yeah.
happened to me
Yeah, of
during the
course.
awakening process too.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I don't know if I trust you entirely. Okay, maybe let me just, let me just kind of make sure that you still got this, right? Okay, if you don't, and here you're speaking to everything. If you don't, I'll go ahead and take over. So all of that got eliminated. And I discovered that this word surrender was something that is far deeper than we think about when we first get into it. And what was made really, really clear to me is that surrender is not an act. It's not a specific, it's not a fixed point in time. I mean, it can be in the beginning. When we go through the motions of going, surrender, I'm going to surrender this, I'm going to surrender that, or letting go. Surrender is a state. It's more of a state, and it's something that can deepen. And and I almost can't describe what it looks like. And I feel like if I try to, it might cheapen it or reduce it. But it's as if your heart space and your energy here is always pointed towards grace. It's always pointed towards this. It's always pointed towards the moment. And as I aligned to that, and it just felt like it locked in, you find yourself not wanting to be anywhere else but in this. And as that surrender for me began to get deeper and deeper, the moment started to really, really, really compress. And I was asking myself questions through this, like, how far can I surrender? Can I only be right here and take no thought for all of this stuff connected around love and safety, practicality? remembering to go to work, remembering to pay a bill. Can I give that up? And our sensible nature will say,
Hmm.
no, 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 I still need to manage this. I still need to manage this. And this is at a very deep level, a very subtle level. And I'm not saying that we throw those things out. So I don't want this to
Yeah,
be
thank you for clarifying this.
yes, I don't say that we right, and that is the challenge with putting this stuff out there, just
Exactly,
to
because the
to
mind,
the world.
unfortunately, the stuff that we talked about, nothing here works as like black and white, and one has to be really comfortable with the paradox being a normal part of these conversations until it stops looking like paradox at all. You see what I mean? Otherwise, the
Thank
mind
you.
just will grab hold, and I get it because there's nothing wrong with that. It's just how the mind operates. It loves to have black and white. And oh, so do you mean, like, even you making that statement about bills and stuff, like the mind going, so what do you mean I have to just like leave everything, and like who's gonna put food on my family's plates, and
Sure.
stuff like that, right? I mean, I just think it's typical,
Yeah.
but
It
still appreciate you, clarifying this. That's not what
yeah.
we're saying
So
here.
yes to everything you said. The practical life still has to happen.
Yeah.
And I'm still in this transitory period where like I'm having a little bit more challenging time like making my own videos because
Hmm.
wherever it is that I'm speaking from, something says it needs to be tempered a little bit. Now, if I was speaking just very, very directly about my experience to you in a private conversation, this would be completely different as well, because it would just be about love and God and grace, and I'm just blown open. And I went, okay, that's very nice here, but that's not very digestible for somebody or palatable for somebody who's just going to stumble along and watch a video. So
Hmm.
I'm still learning that, and I feel like it's going to be a little while of um, an acclimation period because my entire relationship with moving through life and through the world just dramatically changed.
Yeah.
As you said, to put it in context, this is after 15 years of meditation, inquiry, having things change, and then reintegrating those into the nuts and bolts, the mechanics of regular life. So bills still get paid. I still go to work.
Because of, so much quote unquote weird stuff that I shared on this channel about my own journey. And that included
Mm,
what I call the heart open. I call it like heart opening or
mm,
awakening of a heart, something like that. And I don't necessarily talk about it much, but I wrote about it in a book. So I think that most people who and I didn't hold back, because when I wrote the book, I knew that I will either write it and not hold back in a way you've just described, that not
mm,
go full on, or I will just never write it. It was either this or that in this case for me, because I just couldn't write this book and filter myself in any way or be
mm.
preoccupied of
Sure.
if someone's gonna misunderstand this or think I'm a weirdo, or which I wouldn't be surprised if someone did, by the way. And I wouldn't blame them. Like, honestly, fine, right? But I suppose what I'm trying to say, and I think that this is also important, and I'm so grateful that you came back and that you shared this part of the journey, because to me it just speaks to the beauty of this unfolding. You see what I mean? And
Mm,
I so
yeah.
love the fact that here's a guy who, like, does, you couldn't care less about the Hindu stuff or retreats or rituals and everything, but there's, even you showing up there with all that resistance was part of that momentum that basically has been, at least from where I'm looking, there's been a momentum with you that's been
Mm,
carrying you. You see what I mean? And it carried you right there to that retreat, to that, call it grace, call it whatever, God, I don't know. I love the momentum because it does have a momentum. There comes a point where there's simply this doesn't seem to be a choice, and you just
mm,
end up, you sort of find yourself just being in places and doing things, and you may even not like them or even totally rebel against them and be like, what the hell is that, and like, I don't want to do it. So I really want to say that because that's the non-linear and yet sort of, unpredictable, unknowable, and yet completely quote unquote intelligent way of unfolding, and it's so different for different people. And
Sure.
I think that the people who watch this, this is why I love that there's, at least I get a sense of the people who watch the channel, that there's like an openness and complete recognition that everybody's journey is unique, and people
Mm,
will try so many different things, and their awakenings will happen through so many different avenues and situations and circumstances. It's wonderful. So I just love how fresh this whole thing is with you. But I have a question, if you don't mind,
sure.
about just going back now that you are out of the retreat and you've had time to reflect sort of on what went on.
Hmm.
You talked about that rebelliousness, that
Hmm.
moment where something was going on and you were like, nope, I'm not having it, not going there. So now that you're out of it, do you have any thoughts on what was that about? What was that resistance about?
Um, that's a good one. Geez, I don't know. From a very young age, I don't. I think I found myself not wanting to be stuck to a degree. I found myself not wanting to be stuck in things like the social matrix that was being imposed on me.
Mm-hmm.
I was never able to blend in. I was never
Mm-hmm.
able to do the whole shtick. And I think that very young, I had a very deep sense of a connection with something other than myself to one degree or another. And then that kind of ebbed and flowed. And as a result of that relationship, which I quit talking about because nobody really understood it, it was very personal. Um, Even when I was in church in like my late teens, I was very active in sort of a very active Christian environment. I
Mm-hmm.
found that when I shared about it, it didn't really go well for me because it was very open, very transparent, very, here's my direct relationship with this, with God. And nobody wanted to hear that because I was also communicating my sense of flaws or vulnerability. And it doesn't matter what your faith is or what you're trying to do. When vulnerability shows up and is presented to you, it can make people uncomfortable, I
Yeah.
think.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
and then the second part of that would be that, so there's still this ongoing relationship, but also here's all these horrible things happening to me in my life,
Mm-hmm.
right? And all the trauma and just kind of the whole thing, which we covered already. And so I began to build this resentment against life or against God or against the universe. And I went, you know what? I was very sincere with you. This was the script, the story. I was very sincere with you, and sort of the classic model of, and all of these bad things happened to me, even though I felt like my heart was in the right place. And that's where the rebellion comes from. I don't
Yeah.
trust you. I'll do it myself. I'll figure it out. The hell with you. Also, I'm mad at you. I blame you because I felt like I showed up a very, 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 very innocent and open, even as a child. I felt that, and very naive and very, very just soft and tender. And I ended up like this, covered in tattoos, covered in armor, covered
Yeah.
in experiences. And I, the flag that I was waving was why I didn't want to be configured like this. I didn't want to be well defended. I wanted to walk through the earth and be soft and open and loving and kind. And
Yeah.
I didn't break me. You did. So these are the stories, the scripts that are coming up. And that was where the rebellion was really seated for me. And then once this grace showed up, it literally just felt like just coming home after decades. It was just, I understand, or it doesn't matter, or you're still there, or thank you, or because it just, you feel like you're in a very dry spell, like you're in the desert. And if you're in the desert for 35 or 40 years, it can have a very profound effect on everything that we do, however it is that we move through the world. And so to
Mm-hmm.
watch this, almost apparently the last vestiges, the deepest vestiges of that identity structure and that resentment just get wiped out in the weirdest of models in a Hindu retreat with somebody calling it shaktipat and that karma was being burned out of me was like that's just, that was so weird. But then I saw the beauty in it because I went, of course, it's going to be in the model that's not of my choosing. It's going to be the exact opposite way I've approached my entire awakening thing. It's going to be something that I don't gravitate towards. I don't know if I necessarily like it. Don't put this red thing on my face. Like, no. And then
Love
that
that.
was that all of that communicated to me that this had nothing to do with me ever,
Yep.
that I was held and carried and loved, and that grace was there the entire time.
Yep.
And when that really settled in, I must have cried for days, just off and on, sitting, crying, but not in a despair, not in a grieving, just in a sense of relief, in a sense of finally. And while we don't
Yeah.
really land, of course, in any particular spot, finally is referencing the resolution of this decades long rebellion of like, thank God that's over.
Yeah.
And now I'm looking at everything with this wonder of just like a child again, like the child
Yeah.
that before all of the stuff happened, where I'm just like, wow, look at the sunset, or have you tasted this food, or look at that, you're falling in love with everybody,
Yeah.
just, and you just like, and you just feel so blessed, and you feel like, what was I wound up about the entire time, knowing full well that we're going to be wound up during the horrible,
Yeah.
the challenging process of this, but everything just clicked into place. And then that's when all of this stuff really started happening. I saw a few things became very clear. I watched another friend who shared a video, and she talked about leaving relationships, and
Mm-hmm.
she talked about going out on her own. And I can remember sitting there listening to it. And I almost never watch videos anymore. And I watched this one, and it said all of the stuff surrounding love and safety. Now, okay, act on it, move on it. And I knew for a long time, and I'll spare you all the details, that my particular relationship, that it was time to end that.
Yeah.
And also where I was living, it was time to end that too, all in one fell swoop. And that was where the final vestige of that, like the love and the safety, came up. And it says, okay, well, you're sitting in this grace, you're sitting in this place. Now move.
Yeah.
And I experienced all kinds of different fears surrounding that. All kinds of, okay, can I just go out and find a place on my own, and can I just call this off entirely? And um, it was the strangest paradox of feeling this fear, holding it, honoring it, and then also knowing there was no other option but go, just move forward. So it didn't matter
Yeah.
whether I had this fear or not. So, so I started looking at places, and then I had to sit down and talk with my former partner and said, very graciously, it's time for me to go. And it was all
Yeah.
very, very, very connected to the specifics of TED, of going, I can survive out there. And not only can I survive out there, I can probably flourish out there. And then I can do what I wanted to do, because I've spent my entire life attempting to plug myself into other people's lives. And things like my art, or my channel, or my expressiveness, or my creativity, or the writing that I do, have all been moved aside and taken a back seat so that I could navigate around you, your life, your world,
Yeah.
and your approval. And it was more than symbolic of go find your own place, turn it into your own little art studio, hang out with who you want to, and then I'm free to just, I can make a video when I want to. I don't have to go, are you busy, and go around the periphery of the house, or go out to the park, which is where many of mine are, which is nice, but I
Yeah.
couldn't just in the comfort of my own place and do these things because I
Yeah.
didn't feel good. And all of it kind of just went, this is an apex of your life where it's sort of a before and an after in terms of how I'm moving through the world. So I left. So I found a place. And the one thing that someone I talk to quite frequently, my teacher, I suppose you would say, said something that finally made sense to me. And I remember when I first heard it, I was very resistant to it. And she
Mm-hmm.
says, environment is stronger than will. And I went, I don't know. I don't know if I like that or not. And she was speaking specifically about what it's like to move through an awakening process. And I always held this belief that, well, I can weather anything and I can be in any type of horrible environment that might be even detrimental to my emotional well-being. I just have to turn it into fuel for inquiry and I have to dig into it and everything will be fine. And I guess if you want to really go out into the absolute, of course, yes, everything's fine at all times. But when the absolute and the relative are merging, then you start to go, this environment, whilst my particular one wasn't toxic, wasn't anything terrible like that. I was restrained and I was restricted and I was kept sort of, you know, and it hit me all at once. And I said, I have to go. I have to leave, you know. Um, so now I'm in the aftermath of that entire movement, and to see and watch the synchronicities that come in the bizarrest forms. I don't even want to talk about it because people will think I have lost my mind. But really, I mean, there's silly things. There's numbers and there's things like, and
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not,
yeah,
I'm not
yeah.
a number guy. I've never been into any of that. So, and I still am not. But you can't help but notice when you're seeing it 100 or 200 times a day. So
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really use any of these to interpret, well, it means I need to buy a lotto ticket at this time. No, it just was grace is here. You know, you're moving, you're tracking along, you're sort of in alignment or in flow, and however, and that's as far as I wanted to interpret it. And then it just becomes a moment to moment of that surrender of what next, what next, what next. And that what next always seems to just be intensely focused on this. And then going full circle into what we talked about whether or not we're paying bills or not like that, then what comes up? Oh, pay the bill. Okay, go to work. Okay, make
Yep.
food.
Exactly. Yeah.
But there's
No, it's
just
a no-brainer. It's sort of,
yeah.
yeah.
And so I had
Yeah.
experienced this at any number of levels for years off and on, but this was something very different.
Mm-hmm.
It was very permanent. It doesn't leave, it doesn't go. It's not uncomfortable to be in that place. You just go here. And then, like for me, like the very strange stuff starts happening. And this is, feel free to throw all the qualifiers on this if you want for whatever for the rest of your listeners. And then concepts and things like, oh, I need to be aware of the ego when it shows up, or I need to do this, and you start to go, what does that even mean? So
Yep.
all the contexts, all the definitions that we've brought into and adopted, especially if we're looking at stuff through a trauma layer,
Yep.
start to reveal themselves. And it's becoming very clear that we do ourselves a tremendous disservice in one form or another, innocently and unwittingly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When we get into this, the sort of the non, like, I don't even know what non-duality is. I couldn't
Mm-hmm.
tell
Mm-hmm.
you.
Yep.
I don't have
Yep.
any desire to put a definition on anything that's happening right now. But we grab them, and then that becomes our new filter for this is how I want to be.
It's a new
Yes,
identity.
yes.
Yeah. Sort of.
And it's so easy to hide behind that stuff, and it sounds so good. It's, I mean, to some, I suppose. And I'm still going, you're still deciding that
Yep.
something should be other than this. You're still picking and choosing. You're still
Yep.
going, not this, but that, or there's a better other place for me to be when I get there, when the ego is dissolved, or
Mm-hmm.
when duality collapses, then it will be fine.
Yeah.
And so, just watching all of that, kind of all of it just crumble and collapse. Um, if you remember the movement right before that, a few months before, was just watching the trauma structure collapse.
Yep. Yep.
And then it was just sort of like the base level of existential identity. And it was just
Mm-hmm.
watching that just get absolutely demolished.
Mm-hmm.
And now everything is completely different. It's completely different. I don't even know how to describe it other than it's just motion. And the thing I think I want to also come back into is that for
Mm-hmm.
me, there was a reconciliation of the personality of, shall we say, the TED, where you moved fully back into it. And then
Yep.
the relative became very beautiful. I get to be, I don't ever have to um, apologize for my existence. I don't ever have to justify it. And how it is I'm plugged in is good. It's not just good enough. It's just the way it's supposed to be. And and I think the Zen teachers will tell you that, where you go out, and I spent many years just kind of hiding out in the absolute, and then you come back down again, and then you fully inhabit your personality. And
Totally.
that whole movement, while I was walking in circles at the retreat, and the trauma structure before that, and the shadow work before that, was like a I think Adyashanti put it best, where it's a redemptive love. It's a redemption of how you're plugged in. Because how is this not everything? How is this not grace? How is this not God? Or how is that not, or any other person, not just specifically here? How is not all that not perfection, at the
Yeah.
deepest level?
Yeah.
So,
This is why my channel is called Humanizing Awakening, by the way.
yeah, it's
Because
beautiful. I love it.
because that's precisely what I came to see, that basically the life, this humanness, was in no way separate from, the so-called absolute or the transcendence
Mm,
or whatever. And to this day, I'm actually kind of learning who that human is. That is
yeah,
me.
yeah.
You know what I mean? It's been a process, I'll tell you, because I feel like from that moment onwards, like I've been actually discovering in many ways what that means. Because so much of who I was, like you said, was who I am in these circumstances, who I think I should be, who I am in this relationship, who I am in these circumstances, right? Like who I need to be or should be in order to blah blah blah, right?
Right. Yes.
Whereas just being, like, what does it mean to just be me with none of those agendas, right? Like that's a whole other kind of journey, to like discovering that human of yours that doesn't function from those strategies or from those shoot places and things like that. So anyway.
But it felt like, and it it's been like this for the last couple of years, but it really ramped up, is that every day feels like I'm on bonus time. It really feels like I'm on bonus time. And it's a paradox. I have to finish the whole thing so that it's
Mm-hmm.
really contextualized. It's a paradox of, from this point on, nothing matters, but not in a nihilistic way at all. And not it doesn't matter if I die. It's the crazy movement into nothing matters, as in all is well. But then automatically what seems to happen here is the sense of very free moving responsibility in how I interact with life goes with it. So now I'm more attentive to things, but without any clench or identity or worry about the outcome. It's like you begin to cherish all of your actions.
Yep.
So everything is a bonus after this. Kind of, it doesn't matter, and at the same time revere and love anything from making your breakfast to interacting with somebody. It doesn't matter who it is, to how I do my job, or to make sure that maybe I'm a little early, or and it's the strangest thing to see happen, to have that movement appear like that. And then the thing that naturally came up for me was, because every day is I know I'm living on I'm playing with house money. I'm on bonus time here. Is, how do I be of greatest service?
Yeah.
because I'm no longer concerned about in a fear based way about how life unfolds for me. And then I had to really dig into that as well too, because that became a prayer. How can I be of greatest service? But then the second thing I added to that is that I don't know what service looks like. It doesn't have to fit into a specific model.
Yep.
Because in the very beginning, when we first, in like 15 years ago, when I had that first opening, that Ken show, of course, I wanted to go off and I wanted to save the world, and you want to be a
Of
teacher or
course.
you want to do whatever. And then, that's years in the past. This is like a different thing where I go, how can I be of service? And I don't know what that looks like. And
Yeah.
it could look like sitting here quietly and holding space for the rest of existence and never saying another word about it. Or it could be helping somebody change their tire. It doesn't
Yep.
fit into a specific model.
Man, isn't that amazing? Like, I
Yeah,
love that.
yeah.
Or it could be helping someone change the freaking tire. Just
Right.
amazing.
It just doesn't,
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be this lofty thing. I
No.
mean, you're not going to go out there and save the world anyway. So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I've seen
Yeah.
countless people who are just have a first opening or shift, and off they go, and they're like, I'm going to be a healer, and I'm like, maybe not yet. It's
Yeah.
great, and I'm super excited for you, but let this sit for 4 or 5 years, and then see if you're in the same place.
The one thing that you talked a lot about, also in our previous conversation, it had to do with trauma, right? What you call the collapse of
Mm,
the trauma structure. And then I remember I was about to go away, and in the evening I saw your video, the
yeah,
for the trauma folks. So I want to go kind of circle back to it now
sure.
with that experience that
Mm,
you've had. What's different about the way you look at that now? Or I don't know. I have a question somewhere that is more articulate, but I can't find it now.
mm. Well, I can only move in the direction that's coming up for me right now, and feel free to interrupt me if
Yeah.
the question shows up.
Yeah.
And this could be completely in left field, but I know that moving through trauma, and when we're starting to feel through this stuff, that one of the deepest things that appears in us is that if I surrender entirely, or if I let go entirely, that it's very possible that something bad is going to happen again.
Yep.
And this could just be a tangent, but what I begin to notice, and I felt like I would have these imaginary conversations with imaginary people that were maybe watching the video or whatever, because that can be a very, very powerful roadblock because you have the evidence that when you're not looking, or when you're young, or when you're a woman, or when you're any of these things where you may experience trauma, you have the proof is in the pudding that something bad is going to happen,
Oh yeah.
right? And I started to notice, at least for me, that just enough, I feel like this might sound weird, just enough of the echoes of that, a little bit of programming in the body for me,
Mm-hmm.
seemed to stay there, where I never really had to, um, how do I say this? Because trauma does leave a little bit of an echo in the body, like, and now that we're adults, and now we're grown-ups, and now we're the adults in the room, so to speak, that I had just enough that it doesn't necessarily affect how I move through the world, but that I'm always going to be okay, that I'm going to be able to read the signs, whether I'm going to be in a dodgy
Mm-hmm.
environment, or whether I'm going to put myself in a situation unwittingly because I'm already just basically pure human static because trauma just happened to me. And that there's enough of it left there that it doesn't create any sort of identity, but this natural flow tends to keep me very, very safe and very sort of aligned with, go here, go there, don't go here, don't go there. And I felt like if people were able to hear that, then they would go, all right, so I'm not just going to be walking around the world with a blindfold on. There's a sense of guiding there that happens. So I don't know if that was anywhere close to what you were saying,
It's
but
totally close, and I can tell you that this is honestly the hardest bit for me to convey. Even even after now 3 or 4 years, that how do I convey that this movement from this, let's call it, for lack of a better word, surrendered place, okay,
yes,
is not, has absolutely nothing to do with like losing your capacity to be vigilant
yeah, there you
or
go.
kind,
Yeah,
do you know what I
yeah,
mean?
that.
And I suppose that you're kind of maybe helping me to articulate something that I honestly haven't managed to convey, because the protectiveness, because people ask this question on this channel in the comments, they
Okay.
go well, how will, like, if I go to this like surrender or no self or something like that, people will have different ways of asking this question, then how I will protect myself, right? But
Yeah,
I think the
yeah.
protection, I'm guessing that the protection that is being spoken of in those instances, it's not the pragmatic, practical protection that we're talking about, is the protection that to me is directly connected to the sense of separation
Mm,
that requires you to not be affected, that creates the, first of all, the opposition to life, like you called it, or holding life at arm's length, and the
yeah.
primary, I would say, function or byproduct of this separation is the fear of being affected, is the
Mm,
fear of being emotionally especially affected, which to me is also totally
right.
tied to trauma, right? So now
Hmm.
the protecting and defending is the game, right? So is the need
Yeah.
to mitigate the experience, ours and everybody else's, through various manipulations and stuff like that, to prevent that being affected from happening, which is really it comes down to control. You see what I mean? So
Yes.
it's that goes, and out of
Yes.
that, the way of because those strategies and the mitigation and the fear that come out of fear of being affected emotionally goes, because there's the inherent safety with capital S that we talked about, right? Then actually what remains is this incredible intelligence
Mm,
of the ability to respond fresh to any moment with such, clarity, as opposed to from a place of conditioned responses, habitual fears and stuff like
sure.
that.
Yeah.
This is the best shot I can honestly give
Oh,
when it
okay.
comes to
Okay.
that.
So yeah. So let me add into that. I'll
Go.
just because I got it. Okay. Get this flash. I'm like, aha. So we're
Yeah.
gonna frame it in like 75 different ways, right? So another way to
Great,
frame it, which is
great.
the
Yeah.
exact same thing, is that when we experience really severe trauma, and we'll say in this for the sake of this conversation, we'll say it's emotional trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Those are lenses, right? That we continue to view the world. Lens and identity are interchangeable in this context, and as these lenses will continue to motivate us to go into, say, something like you have a pattern of really bad relationships in your life, and then you go, I don't
Yep.
know why it keeps blowing up in my face. I don't know why I keep getting emotionally unavailable men or women, or I keep
Mm-hmm.
going into I'm trying to, resolve something because I have a daddy issue or a mom issue, and I keep finding that partner. And as these lenses fall off, as we're seeing through them and we're feeling through them, which is the most important thing,
Yep.
then what happens is a natural clarity where it just, those type of situations, we're not blinded by those lenses, and then they become unappealing, and then they almost disappear. You just
Yep.
go, why would I even move in that direction? That doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
Because there's that, it's like the old Buddhist way of saying things where it's like clear seeing. And it just, and then you can recount, you can almost look back on your choices and understand without any shame, without any guilt, without any, I should have done it any different. You go, that was me operating while I'm looking through 5 different lenses of 5 different traumatic experiences, and you understand it and you see it and you go, oh, well, I don't have to look through those lenses anymore. And it's a whole new fresh thing. And then what simultaneously has seemed to happen here for me is things that I almost literally maybe wouldn't register in my field of vision or hearing or something. I go, oh, I should move in this direction. Ah, okay. And it's so one thing becomes very obscure and very sort of irrelevant, and then this new, clearer, fresher way of just moving becomes, quite honestly, ridiculously obvious and clear. You just go, okay, move over here.
Yeah.
You know.
And there's just, and actually, it's incredible that how much common sense is there, right? So
comes online. You go, why would I do that? That doesn't,
right, like, and you're right, which is why you then look sort of back in your life and the choices, and you see the play out of all these traumas and patterns, right, and everything. How much of that, how much of the way we function is from how do I avoid and what do I get out of this, and all this negotiating that goes on with every situation that you go into. So when all those things fall away, there's just life, and there's just this like natural, like I said, it's not the no need to protect yourself does not mean lack of response. And I think that is being
it's implied in some of the conversations that we hear.
Like, if there's no protection, then you just like, if I don't protect myself, then everything goes, then how will I? But actually, not only that there is this incredible ability to respond fresh to the moment. In my case, I can tell you that the boundaries that I would have not been able to set before have only become possible because of that openness.
Yeah, that was good right there. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
so it's almost like,
you nailed it.
Thank you. Thank you for helping me. Thank you. I don't know if I nailed it, but you literally helped me to articulate it, because honestly, this is like with a lot of those things, I think we kind of have that in common, that I think we both like simplicity, and it's important. Like for me, that's always been the case. Even when I was at university, I always respected the professors who were able to explain really complex stuff in a very simple way, and they were really determined to make it simple and accessible to everyone. And to me, they were proving me how much they actually knew about this stuff.
Sure.
Because it's the ones that had to go like rah rah rah, and everything's so complicated. They were just really interested in themselves. They were not interested in teaching anyone and whatever,
right.
Yeah. So, but it's also true that with this stuff, it's kind of, it is a challenge to convey in the conceptual way, in the way the mind works, all the stuff, the no self, the no doer, the stuff that we talked about today. It may sound maybe scary or complicated or difficult or challenging or something like that, but actually I found again and again with every shift that how once it becomes a direct experience, there's such simplicity and almost like a duh kind of a moment.
Yeah.
Right?
It's painfully obvious.
Right?
So how did I not see that before?
To me, simplicity is inherent in the direct experience, the simplicity and the obviousness.
I mean, so yeah, agreed, 100%. And I think two things. I would say that one, that we can have some relative type of shame or something, or a lack of trust in ourselves, when that personality has yet to be reconciled or redeemed, or however you want to say it, right? And moving through that stuff and feeling through that stuff is a pretty important part of the process, where you go, I trust how this is going to move, and then I'm no longer having shame about why did I do this? How did I end up in this place? How did I end up repeating the same thing? Because that shame can also be a trap. But even more importantly is that simplicity is looking at the structure and the identity that we've taken on for the model for what our awakening should look like. And it's become so clear that just that you have been saying and alluding to this entire conversation, that it's different for everybody, that this process is literally custom tailored exactly for how your particular personality is configured, or your personality or mine. And it may not have anything to do with how Adyashanti did it, or how Ramana Maharshi did it. And to put us up against these models and say, well, he just sat there in total silence for forever. I'm not doing that. That must not be a way. All of that can just go, and you can move into that personality and then see that it was never about these external models of what awakening was supposed to look like. It was supposed to look like right now, what's happening specifically for you in your particular flavor. And there's no separation in that. There's no duality in that. There's no, oh, well, that's my personality, and that's something that I need to repress. That's the ego. You go, that's just all needs to get thrown right out, and let's just be right here and be very attentive to whatever's coming up in the moment.
Exactly. Thank you for saying this. I've been banging on about this. I don't know for how long, because I basically, as much as I appreciate, and I mean it, the incredible knowledge that's out there about the awakening process, and there's definitely patterns and sort of similarities, especially when it comes to like the fundamental shifts, you know what I mean? Like I would say in that sense. But in terms of like how this journey unfolds, I've seen it all over again. People not only experiencing different shifts in different ways, but also in different sequence to what is normally expected, or to how most people, right? So to me, this is very important, because as much as I have this appreciation for this knowledge, I can see over and over again how it builds up an expectation, and it's like a dangling carrot that is constantly out there somewhere that you're waiting for to look this particular way, as opposed to what's going on with you right here and right now, and this belief that this moment of whatever we call enlightenment or awakening, whatever is somewhere away. And I think that because I don't think there's anything wrong with the descriptions or stories or anything like that. It's just when we take the description and think, oh, this is what it should look like for everybody, you see? And I now know at least 3 or 4 people in total who had no knowledge of awakening. Like I have had none for the longest time. Didn't know any terminology, and have gone through all the shifts that we've talked about, and only learned then, after awakening, learned that those shifts have particular names and so on, and started connecting the dots, and that's how they learn. Do you see what I mean?
That's becoming more and more prevalent, isn't it? Right? And I think that's great, because, and it tends to be, I'm going to make a whole series of videos about this. I think it's more prevalent. I have to say it's more prevalent in men. We want to analyze, we want to categorize, we want to look at a model. It's like you want to look at the blueprint and go, okay, well, Ramana did this, and this did that. And if we're not doing it, very rigid,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
it has
yeah,
to be
yeah.
this. And I have this whole movement that's coming up and out of me to speak more to this thing that you want to call the feminine or the divine feminine
Mm-hmm.
or the
Mm-hmm.
feeling aspect or this heart awakening or the
Yeah.
guru or the shaktipat or whatever. And I'm like, guys,
Mm-hmm.
um, you stand down, call off the alert. As you're able, to the best of your ability, come over here because now we're in a more feeling thing that has everything to do with how we're configured and nothing to do with these fucking abstract models out there.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, so
But I
that would
think,
probably be
but don't you think that I haven't listened to that many teachers, but weren't the known revered teachers always saying to not like get hung up on the, like not to mistake the finger pointing at the moon for the moon, and like, the whole like, has it like,
yes, but as speaking as a very as a very analytical male, I'm just going to absorb that as another filter. It doesn't matter. Okay, he said this, and then I'm going to take that and I'm going to parade that around and I'm going to share it with you and tell you how it is. And or even worse, I'm going to tell you you need to. I'm not even going to absorb it myself. I'm going to say in my most horrifying mansplaining way that
yeah,
you need to not look at the finger that it's only pointing at the moon. It'll
yeah,
never land here. I'm just going to absorb it as another piece of information through which I can continue to filter the world, that I can continue to control, that I can continue to avoid my feelings, that I can
yeah,
continue
yeah,
to
yeah, yeah,
avoid
yeah.
shadow work. And I'm like, uh, guys, that's great, but how many? I've seen a number of folks at whatever place in this movement, and even teachers that are hanging out in the absolute, and that's great.
Oh yeah,
But
yeah, yeah, yeah.
that's great.
Oh
It's only
yeah,
half.
they will not
It's
want to
only half.
hear, yeah, they will not want to hear anything like men. I'm aware that you can't mention anything to do with energy, anything with heart, anything with emotions, anything whatever is just right, which is why I laughed when you said I don't even know what non-duality is anymore, because that's precisely what happens is where, you really the separation or the distinction even is so gone that you no
Mm,
longer know what the hell is duality or non-duality in the
yeah.
first place,
Yeah.
right? And it's something extraordinary happens, because I feel like it's almost like everything is gets so released that now everything is free to be explored, and
Yeah.
that is like everything is totally free to be explored, this personality, this whatever makes this human, all the energy stuff is whatever people's preferences are. Some people move in, some people after all those shifts will just go and have be children and be parents and go to work and never talk about it. And some people will, go
Sure.
and talk
Sure.
about energy or shaktipat or start doing rituals or start doing,
Yeah.
going,
And it's
move to India, whatever.
Yeah, and it's not as if I even adopted any of that. I wouldn't say, "Well, no, I'm Hindu or anything else like that." But it was,
Exactly.
it was, but the beauty of the model that was, it was the exact opposite of
Isn't
how
that
I thought
incredible?
I should manage my awakening. Of course, it was going to be something mystical. Of course, it was going to be called Shaktipat. Of course, there was the word guru was going to be thrown around. Of course, I was going to sit around and just pray to God, which is such a problematic word. I'm like, yes, and now I'm just walking around. I'm just like a big ball of love. I'm like, oh my God, this is so good. Because that was the exact opposite. And it just continues to reconfirm this never had anything to do with me attempting to manage it.
Yeah.
And so now and when that really dawned on me, I think I must have laughed for 20 minutes straight of just like, of course. Yeah. You would do it that way, wouldn't you? It's
The other thing I wanted to ask about, because you said it was a small retreat, I really want to thank the people that were there, even though I don't know them, because um, like they held the space even for your rebelliousness and for your I don't know how to say it. I just love the fact that they held the space for you, even though you didn't. want to participate, even though you were
Yeah,
rebellious.
they were pretty gracious about the whole thing, you know. And they were,
Yeah.
and you know, at the end of the day, they were just ordinary people. We were all standing outside, and there's just a bunch of regular people. It just
Yeah.
happened to look like that, you know. So it wasn't
Yeah.
like the funny thing is that the guy facilitating came up and said the thing that you're not so he doesn't know anything about me. He doesn't know that I have a channel. He doesn't know I've been through any of this stuff. He doesn't know that we do interviews, that I've been in this for forever. So he thinks maybe I'm just some guy off the street, and he watches my resistance, and he comes up to me and he says the thing that I told him later. I'm like, this is, you should never say this to somebody, because he comes up and the first thing he says is, you know, we're not a cult. And I'm like, but that means if you have to say that to somebody, that you're totally a cult. So,
Oh my
so
God.
of
Well,
course they
I
weren't. It
am
was just the standard Hindu model, but I was just like, don't say that to people.
that is
Luckily, I'm like,
incredible.
no, no, I'm here. I'm good. But, you know,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Oh,
everyone made food, and they brought all this amazing food. So the experience itself was, really, really, it's just completely beyond the realm of what I would think, and it would it would be. And okay, but you know, let me give just a little bit of credibility to this shaktipat thing too, because this wasn't just me. There were three of us that went, and everybody, and all three of us, in one form or another, everyone got cooked. Whether it
yeah.
took a little bit of time, like my friend, the meditation teacher, it kind of sat for a little while, and he's blasted now. And he's doing these videos where he just sits and meditates for 3 or 4 hours every morning, and he's on date like 20 of a fast. Like, that's just how it's unfolding in him. But we all, like, he's just like, same thing where he's like, we keep saying it back to each other. We're like, we're in it now. Like, we're in the
Yeah.
shit. Like, nobody knows, really understands what happened. Um, and but everyone's just rolling on with it. And so, and the other person as well is just going through this tremendous movement and this opening and this growth. And I think it's important to bring up the other two people, and that it wasn't just me happening, because there was something very palpable there that
Yeah.
I don't really feel like I even need to explain or categorize. We could just call it grace. You could
Yeah.
just call it, at that moment in time, everyone was being touched by this whatever it was, and to see it affect more than just me has been really beautiful.
Oh
So,
yeah, I've had a couple of people share experiences with shaktipat, including one
mm,
person who actually does those kinds of transmissions, I suppose it's called,
yeah, yeah,
as well. So yeah, it's not completely new for me, but I am yet to have an experience of any kind of spiritual retreat, because I've never been on one. So maybe trying a Hindu one would be would be
yeah.
a
I mean, yeah. Who knows? Because it was very powerful. Like I said, very palpable. And you walked out of the room, and the dynamic changed, and it wasn't like, maybe did that change? I'm like, wow, this feels very different out
different.
here in the
Yeah.
break area as it does when I go in. And I'm like, the whole room is hot and compressed, but not in an uncomfortable way. It's just intense. And you go, and I kept going, what is this? And then for the week or two afterwards, I kept talking to my friend who had been there, and I'm like, dude, what just
What's happening?
happened? And he's
Yeah.
been there before because he knows them. He goes, man, you got laid out by the guru, man. It's the shaktipat, which is just, it's the energy of creation. It's just the divine feminine, you know. And you go,
Yeah.
wow, okay, so
Wow.
what a blessing, you know, what a blessing.
Amazing.
So,
Right, Ted, thank you so much for
mm,
coming on and sharing the next unfolding in your journey. I absolutely
sure.
loved it, and I must have been energized by it because I'm actually not feeling too bad at the moment. You can tell from
So
all the
yeah, that's great.
you can tell from all the talking that I'm doing, you know what I mean? So to everyone, I just want to say Ted's YouTube channel. It's called Tao of Bees. I love the name, by the way, and
That's me. I'm being
I will link it obviously in the description or in a comment. So please check it out. Please remember to subscribe. And I'm looking forward to seeing your videos, Ted, and how things are unfolding. And something tells me we're gonna be back again chatting about something else one day again.
great.
So
Yeah, that's great. I
yeah,
love it. So
brilliant. Thanks,
hey,
everyone.
thank you so much.